Mia Carter and Jessie Sullivan were the kind of best friends everyone envied, inseparable, supportive, and seemingly unbreakable. But when Mia was found dead at the bottom of her staircase and Jessie's name surfaced in chilling whispers, their perfect friendship unraveled into a tale of betrayal, greed, and murder that left the entire town of Oakridge reeling. Oakridge was the kind of town that seemed plucked from the pages of a lifestyle magazine. Its neatly trimmed hedges, pristine sidewalks, and tree-lined streets painted a picture of serenity. It was a place where neighbors greeted each other with warm smiles, the scent of freshly baked cookies wafted from open kitchen windows, and the sound of children's laughter filled the air. For years, residents believed their little slice of suburban paradise was immune to the chaos that plagued the outside world. They took comfort in the belief that Oakridge was safe, wholesome, and untouchable. Among its well-loved residents were Mia Carter and Jessie Sullivan. Best friends since their college years, the two women were practically inseparable. Mia was the heart of the community, a schoolteacher known for her boundless kindness and dedication to her students. She organized bake sales, volunteered at the library, and never missed a chance to lend a helping hand. Jessie, on the other hand, brought a spark of entrepreneurial energy to Oakridge. She ran a boutique that had become the go-to spot for locals in search of unique gifts or stylish accessories. Together, Mia and Jessie embodied everything good about Oakridge: generosity, ambition, and a sense of belonging. For years, their friendship was the stuff of admiration. They attended each other's family gatherings, hosted book clubs, and shared their dreams over countless cups of coffee. To outsiders, their bond seemed unshakable, a beacon of trust and loyalty. But beneath the surface, things were not as perfect as they appeared. Subtle tensions had begun to brew, small, imperceptible shifts that only a keen observer might notice. Averted glances, moments of unspoken discomfort, and the occasional strained laugh hinted at a fracture no one wanted to acknowledge. It was a rainy November evening when the illusion of Oakridge's perfection was shattered. The storm had rolled in unexpectedly, drenching the town in heavy sheets of rain. Most residents had taken refuge indoors, huddled under blankets with cups of hot cocoa. That night, Mia's house stood eerily dark. Neighbors noticed but thought little of it. Perhaps she was out of town. Or maybe she had gone to bed early. The next morning, the truth emerged in the most horrifying way. A concerned colleague, alarmed by Mia's absence at work and her failure to respond to calls, stopped by her house. What they found inside would haunt Oakridge forever. Mia's body lay crumpled at the foot of the stairs, her lifeless eyes staring at nothing. At first glance, it appeared to be a tragic accident. The damp floor near the entryway suggested she had slipped in the storm, falling to her untimely death. The town mourned her loss deeply, rallying around her family and friends. The funeral was a somber affair, with dozens of tearful tributes to a woman whose warmth had touched so many lives. But even as the community grieved, there were whispers, faint murmurs that something about Mia's death didn't sit right. It was a feeling, intangible yet persistent, that refused to be silenced. 3 weeks after Mia Carter's funeral, the residents of Oakridge were still grappling with her sudden and tragic death. The school where she had taught hung a memorial plaque in her honor, and her students created a garden of paper flowers as a tribute to their beloved teacher. Despite these gestures, an uneasy pall remained over the town. Mia's death, initially dismissed as an unfortunate accident, began to raise quiet questions. Why had someone as cautious as Mia fallen so easily? Why had no one heard anything that night, not even the faintest cry for help? For most, these thoughts were fleeting, but for Mia's sister, Margaret Hayward, they were impossible to ignore. Margaret had always been close to her younger sister, often describing their bond as unshakable. In the weeks following the funeral, she found herself drawn to Mia's home, a place now heavy with silence. It was during one of these visits, as Margaret sifted through Mia's belongings, that she stumbled upon something strange. Tucked inside a drawer in Mia's desk was a plain, unmarked envelope. Inside it was a handwritten letter that sent chills down Margaret's spine. The letter was dated just 2 weeks before Mia's death. In it, Mia expressed fear, an emotion so out of character that it was almost unrecognizable. She wrote about feeling watched, as if someone had been following her. Mia described how small, unsettling events had begun to disrupt her sense of safety. Windows left open that she was sure she had closed, furniture slightly moved, and the nagging feeling that someone had been in her house when she wasn't home. She didn't name anyone directly, but mentioned that she believed the person responsible was someone she knew. The last line of the letter was the most chilling. If something happens to me, it won't be an accident. Margaret immediately took the letter to the authorities. Though initially skeptical, the police decided to reopen the case. Investigators returned to Mia's home, this time with a more critical eye. What they found confirmed Margaret's suspicions. The scene was far from what one would expect in a simple accident. Scuff marks on the hardwood floor near the stairs suggested a struggle, as if Mia had been trying to resist someone's grip. Beneath the couch, a shattered vase was discovered, its shards covered in dried blood. And on the banister, barely visible to the naked eye, was a fingerprint that didn't match Mia's or anyone in her household. The findings sent ripples through the community. Mia's death was no longer a tragic accident, it was now a suspected homicide. Forensic teams combed through the house and surrounding property, searching for additional evidence. Meanwhile, the town was abuzz with speculation. Who could have wanted Mia dead? And why? The police began to piece together a timeline of Mia's final days, interviewing friends, neighbors, and colleagues. Suspicion started to fall on those closest to her, as is often the case in such investigations. Every whispered secret, every hidden grievance, and every strained relationship came under scrutiny. Slowly, the picture of Mia's seemingly perfect life began to crack, revealing shadows that no one had expected to find. The discovery of foul play in Mia Carter's death shook Oakridge to its core. It was unthinkable that someone might have deliberately harmed the kind-hearted teacher who had been a beloved figure in the community. As the investigation intensified, the police turned their focus to the fingerprint found on the banister. It was a crucial piece of evidence, and the results from the forensic lab didn't take long to arrive. The print belonged to Ethan Roberts, a local handyman with a history that quickly raised eyebrows. Ethan was known around Oakridge for being reliable with repairs and odd jobs, but his personal life was less stable. Recently, he had gone through a turbulent breakup with Jessie Sullivan, Mia's best friend. While most saw Ethan as quiet and hard-working, there were whispers about his temper, especially after the breakup. Jessie had mentioned to a few people that Ethan had trouble letting go and could be unpredictable when pushed. When questioned, Ethan denied ever setting foot in Mia's home, insisting he had no reason to be there. However, his alibi for the night of Mia's death was far from solid. He claimed he had been working late on a renovation project across town, but his employer stated that Ethan had left hours before the estimated time of Mia's death. Compounding the suspicion, a neighbor's security camera had captured Ethan's van parked a short distance from Mia's house that very evening. The evidence against Ethan seemed to grow by the day, but his connection to Mia was puzzling. Apart from his ties to Jessie, there was no clear motive for why he would harm Mia. However, investigators soon discovered that Ethan and Mia had crossed paths more often than anyone realized. Witnesses reported seeing Ethan at a local cafe where Mia was a regular, and receipts confirmed that they had been there at the same time on more than one occasion. There were even whispers that Ethan had done some repair work at Mia's house months before her death. The narrative took a darker turn when investigators uncovered a journal Mia had been keeping in the weeks leading up to her death. In one entry, she mentioned feeling uneasy about someone she described as an outsider trying to insert themselves into my life. While she didn't name Ethan directly, the description seemed to fit him. This revelation deepened the suspicion that Ethan had been fixated on Mia. Despite these findings, Ethan's behavior during questioning remained puzzling. While evasive at times, he didn't display the hallmarks of someone caught in a lie. Instead, his confusion seemed genuine. He admitted to being near Mia's house, but claimed it was purely coincidental, insisting he had no reason to hurt her. The town was divided. Some believed Ethan was a victim of circumstantial evidence, a man with a troubled past caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. Others were convinced that his history with Jessie and his proximity to Mia's home pointed to a sinister obsession. As the investigation progressed, the focus on Ethan seemed airtight until a new discovery shattered everything the police thought they knew. Just as the case seemed to be closing in on Ethan Roberts, a discovery emerged that unraveled the investigation's neatly tied threads. Detectives had been combing through Mia Carter's financial records, looking for anything that might indicate a deeper motive or reveal interactions with Ethan. What they found instead led them to someone far closer to Mia, her best friend, Jessie Sullivan. On the surface, Jessie was the epitome of success and charm, running a popular boutique and maintaining an impeccable image within the community. Yet behind the polished exterior lay a trail of financial trouble that had been quietly building for years. Bank statements revealed a troubling pattern: credit card debt far exceeding her income, a series of missed loan payments, and an increasingly desperate attempt to keep her boutique afloat. One detail stood out above all: Jessie had been named as the primary beneficiary on Mia's life insurance policy, a decision Mia had made out of trust and friendship. The policy, worth a substantial amount, had been updated just months before Mia's death. To investigators, the timing was impossible to ignore. It raised a chilling question: had Jessie exploited Mia's generosity and trust for financial gain? The case against Jessie deepened when surveillance footage from a local hardware store came to light. The footage, taken only a few days before Mia's death, showed Jessie purchasing a length of rope, a pair of gloves, and other items that investigators believed could be linked to the crime. When questioned, Jessie claimed the purchases were unrelated and meant for routine home repairs. But the items themselves, combined with her financial struggles, painted a damning picture. Further evidence came from interviews with Mia's neighbors. One neighbor reported seeing Jessie leaving Mia's house late at night on the evening of her death, something Jessie had failed to mention in her initial statements. While this could have been explained away as a friendly visit, the omission raised red flags. When pressed, Jessie's answers became increasingly inconsistent, and her once confident demeanor began to crack. What truly unraveled Jessie's facade, however, was a closer look at the timeline surrounding Mia's death. Phone records showed that Jessie had called Mia multiple times on the evening of her death, despite previously stating she had not spoken to her that day. The calls stopped abruptly around the time investigators believed Mia had died. Combined with forensic evidence linking fibers from Jessie's clothing to the crime scene, the circumstantial case against her began to solidify. The narrative took a shocking turn when it was revealed that Jessie had recently contacted Ethan Roberts, asking for his help with odd jobs at her boutique. Investigators suspected that Jessie had deliberately tried to draw Ethan closer to the situation, planting his fingerprint on the banister at Mia's house to redirect suspicion toward him. The once clear picture of Ethan as the primary suspect began to fade as Jessie's calculated manipulation came into focus. Her attempts to frame Ethan while benefiting from Mia's death exposed a sinister side to the friendship that Oakridge had once idealized. Jessie had built a perfect image, but now that image was collapsing, leaving behind a tangled web of lies, greed, and betrayal. The unraveling of Jessie Sullivan's carefully constructed life marked the turning point in the investigation into Mia Carter's death. What had begun as a tragic accident, then evolved into a case against Ethan Roberts, now pointed squarely at Jessie, a woman whose motives seemed rooted in greed and betrayal. The evidence against her was no longer circumstantial, it was damning. Forensic analysis of the shattered vase found at Mia's house confirmed that both Mia's and Jessie's DNA were present on the fragments. This discovery indicated a physical altercation between the two women shortly before Mia's death. Further investigation into the timeline revealed that the struggle likely took place near the top of the staircase, where scuff marks on the floor suggested a desperate attempt by Mia to resist. Jessie had been at Mia's home that night, contrary to her earlier statements, and the evidence pointed to her involvement in the fatal fall. What shocked investigators and the community alike was the calculated nature of Jessie's actions. This wasn't a crime of passion born in the heat of the moment, it was premeditated. The purchases she had made at the hardware store, rope, gloves, and other suspicious items were later determined to be part of a plan to stage the scene and deflect blame. Jessie had meticulously planned to make Mia's death appear accidental, and when that failed, she pivoted to framing Ethan. Phone records revealed that Jessie had contacted Ethan under the guise of needing help with repairs at her boutique just days before Mia's death. Detectives surmised that this was her way of ensuring his proximity to the case, setting him up as the scapegoat. The fingerprint on the banister, initially the strongest piece of evidence against Ethan, was now seen as a deliberate plant. Jessie had orchestrated every detail, from her purchases to her interactions with Ethan, weaving a narrative that investigators were meant to follow. Confronted with the mounting evidence, Jessie initially denied everything. Her confident demeanor during earlier questioning had now given way to panic and desperation. The turning point came when a forensic accountant uncovered the extent of Jessie's financial troubles. The life insurance policy on Mia, which would have erased Jessie's debts and provided her a fresh start, was the final link in the chain of motive, means, and opportunity. Faced with the overwhelming case against her, Jessie ultimately confessed. She admitted to luring Mia into an argument that night, hoping to manipulate her into agreeing to financial assistance. When Mia refused, the confrontation escalated. Jessie claimed she hadn't intended for things to go as far as they did, but her actions after the fact told a different story. Rather than seeking help, she staged the scene and set her plan to frame Ethan into motion. Jessie's trial was swift and highly publicized. The prosecution painted her as a woman driven by greed and willing to betray her closest friend for financial gain. The defense tried to argue that the crime was unintentional, but the jury was unconvinced. Jessie was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For the town of Oakridge, the aftermath of the case left an indelible scar. Mia's death was a devastating loss, but the revelation of Jessie's betrayal shook the community to its core. The story of their friendship, once admired and envied, became a cautionary tale of trust broken and ambition gone awry. The whispers of betrayal that had begun as faint rumors grew into a chilling truth, leaving everyone to wonder how well they truly knew the people closest to them.